Hi, this is Ian Braid from DocuSport doing another one of the podcast interviews with a fantastic, talented Manx athlete, looking to dive into him and pick his brains and get his knowledge and wisdom so that we can pass it down to the guys in the academy. And today's guest the is the infamous, the famous, the Commonwealth Games qualified athlete, Mr. Will Draper. Would you like to just introduce yourself, my friend?
Yeah, thanks for having me on and introducing me. So, yeah, Will Draper. I'm from St John's in the Isle of Man. Obviously, proud to be Manx, and started my career in sport as a cyclist, and kind of seen that through almost start to finish in terms of loving and then changing how I feel and changing sports. And now, fortunate enough to have been exposed to lots of different scenarios and lots of different people, and even more recently the Olympic champions in the sport that I compete in. So yeah, even at what I hope is still a young age, I've gained some experience, and I hope that the level I'm at now, which isn't the top, is actually a nice level to hear from, because I always found that podcasts and things like that is often with the highest level of the sport, and it's quite hard to relate sometimes. So hopefully this serves as a little bit of a intermission between where a lot of our Manx athletes are, and getting one or two more steps up the pyramid towards the top, and then onwards to the likes of Cavendish and the rest.
Well, you're the one that's putting pressure on yourself. I haven't even started answering your questions yet. But great and great for you to give you time and great to have you on, man. So tell me where it all began. School. Who were the influences to get you into sport? What sports did you do before you started to specialize? So, what's your sporting credentials and background?
Yeah, so I think I started quite young, to be honest. That will come down to my older brother, Nathan Draper, who's a very well decorated cyclist up until he stopped the sport a few years ago. And my parents' friends, the Kenyuks, which their son Peter Kenyuk is a famous Manx cyclist, Olympic champion, and rode for Team Sky, British champion, etc. So they facilitated Nathan getting into cycling at a young age, and then that was me soon to follow. And as a younger kid, I kind of did the tried different sports and did different things. And even in high school, as I got towards sort of GCSE level, Ballacamine were actually very supportive, and they allowed me. So in years 7, 8, and 9, I presume it would have been, I was partaking in the school sport, and then because I was competing at a national level, they allowed me to go home and train if PE was in the afternoon. So yeah, they even facilitated that for me, which was very nice. So I would say from quite a young age, I was fortunate enough to be able to specialize in my sport, but it has its pros and cons, because obviously with more commitment comes more pressure and things like that.
The so who were the key influences, ex your parents and the Kenyuk family? Who were your key influences in the education system, and who was it? Was there anybody in the school or said, "Do you know what? Don't bother with football. You could be a good cyclist." And who were the early influences in the cycling community for you?
Yeah, so I think in the school, testing my memory now, I believe it was Miss Burnett. It was the head teacher. It came from the top down. Um, but if we kind of backtrack to before that, because of the opportunities that, as a lot of people know, a lady Dot Tilbury, and it was RL 360 cycling at the time. I'm not sure, it was Scottish Provident before that. I'm not sure if it's still labelled that, but it was basically the youth cycling scene, and what that enabled
Hmm.
youth cyclists like me and my brother to do was to compete in the UK. We could compete locally. There's obviously a great grassroots scene for cycling, and a lot of people follow in the footsteps of our famous kind of say founding fathers, and it made more recently that was Cavendish, but before
Hmm.
him there was obviously a lot of great previous generation. And what Dot did for us was enable us to go away as a club and then to be teammates, and in turn I ended up with good results. I was winning in 2012. I won the British National Circuit Race Championship for cycling. So
Hmm.
I think that was something that
The
as I went to high school, they picked up on, and then that's kind of what helped me get that praise from the school as well.
So from a very early age, you've you've got, in order to compete, you've got to go across to the mainland or whatever. What was that like? Who was in your support team? Did your parents come all the time? And what lessons did you think you learned from that you now take into your career now?
So I think like when we were that age, obviously my parents they're my biggest supporters, and my brother's my biggest inspiration, and my parents are my biggest supporters, as with most athletes that are fortunate enough to have that. So the way it would work was the parents were volunteers, so it wasn't only my parents that would facilitate and help me with that. It was other kids of the same age parents. So they enabled us to go away and compete, like you said, and yeah, they really just opened a lot of doors for us. And I think what winning the national championship at 12, it was only four 12-year-olds. I wasn't ahead of my time. I remember a lot of the older athletes, because I was friends with him from my brother because he's older than me, and a lot of the older athletes, and people would say, "Oh, it doesn't mean anything," and you're so young. And I understand where they're coming from now, because obviously, in terms of cycling, up until 16, you'll still be in your club, and then at 16, your results kind of help you get to the next level, which is, rather than a club, it's a team. And then especially at 18, you then step up again. So at the time, um, I really enjoyed it, but I mean, people try to say it doesn't mean too much. But what it did mean, I think, is that it felt like I had a career before I'd even got to the point of picking my GCSEs. I just thought I was going to be a professional cyclist, and that has its pros and cons, because obviously it's nice to be dedicated, and it's nice to have a path ahead of you, because obviously a lot of younger people are unsure of what they want to do, and at the time I was pretty much certain that cycling was going to be the future for me. But yeah, obviously then kind of progressed year after year, and got more into it. But the sport changes as you get older, and you learn different lessons, and the environment changes, and then obviously that kind of led me towards a different stage of my life, and I always had my brother slightly ahead of me to kind of give me advice on what he'd gone through.
Yeah, but you had a challenge, didn't you, about education and/or, yours isn't unique, but the boundary ropes were being set by your elder brother all the time, and you were in the armchair, metaphorically having the ride behind him. But it put pressure on your education, and how did that come to a head, and what decisions did you make, and why?
Yeah, so with cycling, I mean, different sports at different ages, there's a point when you have to step up, and because we were competing in Britain from as young as 10, you kind of get to 17 and 18, and now you're going international. You're going to compete in Spain and Belgium and Holland, in France. And my brother had tried to kind of balance his A levels with this competition abroad, and it didn't quite work for him. So I kind of came to the decision that after GCSE, I was going to leave education. Um, one of the reasons, I think that, like, at the time, I kind of thought if your back's against the wall, you can only go forward, which I guess is not always the best mantra. But I thought I don't want another path. I'm that set on cycling. I'm going to be a cyclist. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, why spend the time doing both? Give myself the best opportunity in cycling. And I mean, that's hard. And I was in a fortunate position. Like, my parents were so good to look after me and things like that at 16. It wasn't like my mum herself moved out of her house at 16. So it wasn't like I was in that position. So yeah, education. I mean, now in hindsight, I don't think I needed to, and I could have definitely seen through to my A levels at least, because what that does is then, with the UCAS points that you earn through A level, at any point in your life, you can go to university, which is what one of my friends is going to do
So
now. Like,
I mean, you'd recommend to continue education for as long
yeah,
as, would you?
I'd say through to A level. Unless you're like a generational talent, there is athletes that just stand out. Someone that I'm sure we'll get onto, Alistair Brownlee, he went to Beijing Olympics at, I think he must have been 18 or 19 or something. So in that circumstance, I would say like you're getting brand deals on the table that are more than like most people's parents' wages. Do you know what I mean? That's a unique circumstance. But I would say for the majority of people that it's worth committing to both at the time, especially because I think now one of my friends, as I was just saying, one of my friends is thinking of a career change. He's going to go to university, but he's a few UCAS points short, and he thinks, "Oh, I wish he will do an additional A level this year." He's in his later 20s, but I think that does help because a lot of sport nowadays, and it's always been this way, it might only last till you're 30, or even if a very long career is till you're 40, and you might decide, not because you have to, but you might just want to go and pursue a different career that requires a university degree. So you're really giving yourself options for the future, which is something I kind of didn't think about at the time. So I definitely kind of recommend balancing the two, and it's definitely possible, I think, especially if you've got a good support network around you.
So, Will, I guess you're sort of 17, 18 by now, and I think you were beginning to get an indication that staying in cycling wasn't for you. What were the flags? What was making you think that, and how did you come to a decision? And again, where was the support to change sport?
So yeah, 17. It would have been at 17. The Commonwealth Games was in Birmingham the following year, and that's something that my brother Nathan went to. And I felt like I'd been in cycling now for a long time, for 7 years, and I'd seen how it had changed for me, and it was very different to when I was younger. And one of the things I guess was that um, it changed. It was just more serious. It was a team sport. Things were stepping up. The stakes were higher. Like there was a lot more crashing. There was a lot more risk involved. I had friends that were hospitalised in races, and I had a team that on paper offered fantastic support. We were one of the most supported sort of junior teams out there in the UK for sure, and in Europe definitely up there in terms of we were given multiple bikes, loads of kit, team camps. There was staff on the team as mechanics and masseuses, physio, team manager, etc., which is kind of what you dream for. But then it just didn't seem to translate for me. I just found that I didn't feel supported as much, even in the simplest terms of being told well done. I felt like it got to that point where to get a well done out of someone was so hard because there was so much at stake, and the sport was at such a high level, and we were racing, like my generation, for anyone who watches any sort of cycling, I was racing against the likes of Remco Evenepoel, who went on to be the senior world champion, and this was the generation I was in. And I think that maybe that came from taking a step up 1 year early, 1 or 2 years early, going international from such a young age. But again, um, it wasn't just because of my brother not going on to. He achieved a lot at 17, 18, and even he was struggling in the future. So I think it was a key thing that kind of played on my mind. And I guess I felt.
Who were
Um,
you? Well, who were you talking to at this time? Because I mean, you couldn't have been happy.
no, I think I was within myself, to be honest. I think I was a little bit um, I was a little bit within myself, but I felt like because I didn't want to leave sport, that I was okay, if that makes sense. Because if I felt like that, if I wanted to leave sport as a whole, I would have felt like really, oh, I need to find someone to have these conversations with. But because my mindset was that I wanted to leave to swap sports, let's say,
Hmm.
then it didn't feel too bad. I think it kind of I obviously knew that Isle of Man sport supported. There were triathletes. There's triathletes on the scene. There was, I think at the time, Joe Riccardi, and we had athletes that were at the Island Games and the Commonwealth Games, and
Hmm.
Andy Nash had done
But
India and the
I mean, I know cycling's at the core of a triathlon, but
different.
what was it that pulled you to triathlon?
It must have been that I was exposed to it because of the local scene. There
Okay.
the simple fact, isn't it? If there's triathlons there, I'd tried one or two. I think as well. I just seen I kind of would look at triathlon and I think I could run quite well because in school we would do um the like cross country and you'd race
Yeah.
against the other school. I'd be pretty competitive. There was always David Malarkey kind of at the head, and then I'd be kind of there with the other guys just behind.
Hmm.
And, that was without any running training, and I knew how to swim. I wasn't very fast, but I've always known how to swim because my mum did a bit of swimming teaching as uh, in terms of like teaching kids, not like a squad.
No,
Not
no, no. As you do,
yeah. So I was lucky again that my parents took me swimming because they do that now with my nephews and nieces and
mm,
the pool and
the
so I got
so
there.
so I get it. It's on your horizon. I can see it, but you need to break into it, don't you? And so there's a power of networks, and I know somebody who knows somebody, and all of that, right? So how did you escalate quickly? Because I think you did into into high performance triathlete, which would have involved going across to mainland and whatever. Just talk me through that bit of your journey.
Yeah. So then what I did was look into the pathway of British triathlon, and
Mm,
they, in fairness, they have a pathway that you can follow for triathletes. This
mm,
was another thing. I guess the sport was open to new people coming in because you did this thing called the performance assessment weekend,
mm,
held in Loughborough. It was held at the start of the racing season, which for most outdoor endurance sports is kind of April till October maybe. And
mm,
what you do is you go away, and on the Saturday you do a swimming time trial, and on the Sunday you would simulate as if you'd just finished the swim. This is because it was too cold to do an open water swim at this
mm,
time of year, and
mm,
you'd simulate as if you'd just done the swim, and you do the bike and run.
mm,
So I think that was open to. I think I'm pretty sure it was open to anyone. There's hundreds of people that did it, and then from that top, maybe 40 are then able to go and compete in different rounds of this British Junior Series, which for me in cycling was a series that I was winning. I podium in 2012, 14, and 16. So
mhm.
it was a bit of a weird step back that now I was just trying to qualify to be in this series, and I went with my best friend. Took me because he was a bit older than me and he could drive in the UK. Because I think, oh, maybe I could have, but I think my mum probably said it was safer if he drove and he looked after me. So we
Ah,
both went over, and I remember this time, it was 11 minutes 40 that you had to go under. And I had this time in my head for about 6 months, the first 6 months of my triathlon, it's swimming, because that was fast. And I remember that I put everything into it, and that was like my big focus. And yeah, I went 11:28. I still remember it years ago. I went 11:28. I was second to last, so I beat someone. And 11:40 was the maximum cutoff. And then we did the next day. I started. I must have been about 180th. I started, and through the bike and the run, I was just working my way through the groups because compared to over the years, I obviously balanced things out a little bit more. But at the time, I was very much a cyclist who was all right at swimming and a bit better at running.
yeah.
And I worked my way through I think I finished maybe mid 30s. So I moved up about 150 spaces and with all these 16, 17, 18 year olds. And what that gave me was a start line. And I think my first start line was a super sprint, which is the shortest form of triathlon. It's about
Mm,
half an hour for all three disciplines.
mm,
Super sprint in Leeds, which is ironic because I eventually moved on to Leeds to train with the Olympic champions. But I remember before the swim was only 400 meters. I told my parents, look, the guys that were ahead of me in the swim, but behind everyone else on the start, aren't here today because I moved my way into the top 40 because of the bike and run. I said, I'm going to be out. I'm going to be out the back of this swim. And they didn't believe. They were encouraging, as you'd expect. And they said, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be there.
mm.
And I was so far out the back that they opened the crossing points on the big long run up to the transition. I somehow lost about a minute and a half in a 400 meter swim. And I worked my way back. I worked not very many places because in the qualifying weekend I was 35th. So I worked my way back to maybe 30th, and I think I did most of that. Obviously, in the last, it was probably in the last kilometre of the run for everyone who'd gone out too hard. I did that, and my parents supported me, but I thought this isn't going to work. I thought I might have messed up here, and I'm just so far behind years in swimming. I've not got the foundation for it. But then luckily I kind of didn't give up, and I moved on to what's essentially called long course triathlon, which is where you swim, and in short course, which is what that super sprint was, you're allowed to ride together on the bikes. So due to aerodynamics, it's a lot faster to be in a bunch for athletes, but in long course you ride on your own. So really there is a bit of a difference, but the swim is a lot less influential. So I moved on to long course. And
Which
that's
played to your strengths, right?
yeah. So I really, rather than give up, I evaluated my strengths and weaknesses and thought that this is going to suit me better. And then I obviously adapted my training and got more specific to it. And then
you adapted your training because you're getting coached, I guess. Are you here at
uh, I was
in
still
Leeds or?
no, I was still uncoached because I felt like my situation was so unique that I almost understood it best. I
Is
was
that, you forgive me, that, I mean, I get it, right? But that sounds a little arrogant. Would you do
yeah.
that again
I,
now?
no, I think I was all right. I think that what I understand your thoughts. But what it was like I was limited in a lot of ways. I was limited. Like I'd always get injuries on the run, and it wasn't because the volume was high. Because believe me, it was like 2 or 3 runs a week, and I'd have shin splints. And it's like, and then my swimming was limited in terms of again like my development. It's coming from a lower level. But I think that if you're prepared to learn, I kind of almost was learning as a coach would, if that makes sense. I wouldn't just blindly jump into things. I would learn as a coach would, and in swimming there was Lee Holland, who's head of the Island squad.
Yeah, yeah.
Not just Lee, but also the swimmers like Joel and Pete, Peter Allen, Joel Watson, both phenomenal swimmers. They were good to because I met them at the Commonwealth Youth Games in the Bahamas, but they were good to me to say, they said, come to Douglas session with 2 coaches, or Pete was definitely a coach. I can't remember at the time.
Well, that's the Manx. That's the value in the Manx community,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They told me to come along, and that was terrible because I couldn't even flip turn on the wall if anyone knows swimming. So I'd lose my time, but I just stuck in there. And then in running, I'd train with Alan Corlett and Ollie Lockley, and Ollie Lockley would do a mile, and I'd just jump in and out for 400 meters at a time, or maybe 600 meters if Alan was kind of a few.
It's brilliant.
Andy Nash as well. So what I was doing was I was making the most of the people around me and learning, and I didn't feel like a coach would. I didn't feel like there was a coach for me, and felt like I was improving. So at that stage, I didn't really search for one.
I'm sort of moving you along a bit, Will. You forgive me, but so get me to the things that you are most proud of before you've gone ex-terra and you've gone off road and things. What are the best achievements that you achieved as a quotes standard triathlete, and would you do anything different in that part of your career?
I think maybe if you say what my best achievements are, and then what would I do differently in that part of my career, I'd say now I've learned to appreciate anything that was good and not be critical, because there's always going to be something you haven't done. There's always going to be something you could have done better. There's always going to be a better result. There's always going to be someone who's doing something else that's better than what you've done. And it's only now, maybe, and I say now, I'm probably talking the past 12 months that I've learned to sit back and actually not be so hard on myself. And I think at the time I can look back now and be a little bit more like evaluate what I did well, and it's a bit easier. But at the time I was probably a little bit harsh on myself. But I think
proud of what you've done.
Yeah, proud of myself for
Good.
taking a step back and also not expecting it to happen overnight. This is one of the conversations I've had a few times with Paul Jones. Was that it was a project that within 6 months I realised it's going to be 10 years, and I'd say I'm 5 years through that. And I think that is an important part to understand. It's not just, I think that's what I didn't have with cycling, but it's what cycling taught me. I didn't picture each year. It's just that classic when you're young, just picturing trying to be the best. But that's not how, unless you're a generational talent, you'd know that by 16. I wasn't, especially like you would know, and you'd be almost famous. Do you know what I mean? But if you're not one of them, you have to do it the slow way, which isn't wrong, and there's no reason why you don't have to be the best in the world at 17 or 18. But what you have to do is have a plan which involves you getting better every year, because then that's possible. Whereas if you're just going to straight up say I'm going to be the best there is, then that's very difficult.
And what is the team that you've put around her? Who's in Team Will?
Yeah, so obviously, I guess you got to start with yourself. You've got to be in your own team, haven't you? You have to believe that what you're doing and that you have what it takes.
You've got to accept responsibility, certainly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to be self-confident. You don't have to think I'm going to win every race. But I think this is a conversation I have with my partner, who's also a professional triathlete. She wouldn't have the same. She wouldn't say I'm great. She'd have a lot of self-doubt. But I'd say, well, if you sit back, you are confident that you can improve each year, and you're at a very good level now. She's top 100 in the world. So I'm like, if you improve each year, then you get closer and closer to the top of the sport. Do you know what I mean? And that's the type of self-confidence that you can have.
So there's your partner in Team Draper. What else have you got?
Partners, yeah, she came on board only the past year. So if we talk back in 2019, which was 2018 was when I did that short course, and then 2019 when I went long course, and then it started off with the parents. Started off with my parents, and I guess a lot of the community, which I've spent a lot of time in the UK now. You don't quite have it the same as the Isle of Man. I think a lot of the people there, the local triathlon club and the people involved in that, they see you race and they believe in you, and even the cyclists and stuff that I say left behind, but I still competed in cycling. Slowly, like you believe in yourself, your parents, your family believe in you, and more people come on board. And I remember one of my first sponsors was Cycle 360, a local business, and Mark and Sasha helped me out there. And over the years, like, you deliver on what you say you're going to do, and you get better and better. And this is what then makes more people come on board. And then, I mean, from a physical standpoint, there's obviously, in terms of people around that help you, there's obviously like sport aid, which is what a lot of the academy are becoming exposed to now.
Yeah, you get to it. I'm glad you didn't need the prompt for sport aid. Good man.
No.
But what role has sport aid played in your journey to date?
I think, well, in my journey, like I've always been quite independent.
Really?
I would say I have been quite. I'm an independent person. I've got quite a decision. Yeah. I'm not someone who needs help with decisions and stuff, because I think quite logically. But I think what you always know with sport aid is that they've got everything that they can to help you. And obviously, like, one of the key things for me was finances and facilitating me being able to compete at races. But that's not something that you should take sport aid for, because what's happened now is I work with different sponsors and I work with different companies, and they don't offer what sport aid do. And what you got to remember with sport aid is that there's a lot of people that are paid a salary to help you get better, and there's a lot of volunteers as well, and all these people, they're in the interest of the athletes, aren't they? And I think that's what you've got to appreciate, is that there's support and they just want you to do well. It's not a case of, like, the thing with money is you can get it from a lot of places, can't you? And a lot of the time when I get money now, it's because I give them exposure on social media or I win races. But in reality, they don't care for me the same way that, like, sport aid, there's nutritionists, there's the S&C, there's people overviewing it, there's mental health, there's everything that, like, everything that they think an athlete needs, they'll do their best to provide. And if they've got something that they don't, what they do is they'd have a conversation about how they could adapt and help you with that. And I think as you get older, you, at the time, and especially within the Manx bubble, you almost think that that's, like, you take it for granted. You think it's everywhere, but it's really not.
No, no. The this is a conversation with you. It's not about me, but you're absolutely right because I've not seen it, and this ambition to be the number one athlete talent ID and development community in 2029. Why I'm invested in it is because I can see it happening, and it's with people like you and your colleagues who are on the journey, as it were, that are contributing to it as well. But sport aid is at the spine of it to me. So listen, I've got two more questions for you. They're both easy. The first one is, what's your, if you've got unfinished business in the sport of triathlon, when you get to the end of the journey and you look back, what will have defined success for you?
I think success is just going all in, really, and you have to. Success isn't necessarily a podium or a medal.
No.
I think that if you commit your life to something, and not at an early stage, what the thing that I find most important is that you progress into this like period of wanting absolute success. I personally believe, and from the people I've been exposed to and the experiences I've had, that it's not something that can just go on and on and on and on. It's very rare that someone's at the top of a sport for so many years, and it's very rare. And especially now, like modern sport is insanely competitive. There's always
Yeah.
like a peak to it. So I think success is building to this peak and delivering a period of complete dedication to the sport and just seeing what that brings and just persevere into there, because I don't think that the results are what will carry me. I think it's the experiences and like
I think that is just a brilliant answer
yeah, I
because
would just
it
a
isn't
way
all about
to describe
medals.
it is just like if you just think how easy, if it was something that was easy, then the medal would mean nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's the fact that like
Mm,
so hard, and it's the fact that like so many people, including yourself, fail when you try and do it, and that
mm.
the value in that failure is actually success because of the value it's given.
The learning and the experience, and
Yeah, and you
they, I'll
take that.
do this differently, and yeah,
Yeah, it's not,
and life, it's a metaphor for life, isn't it?
yeah,
Because
but it's not that I don't seek medals, and it's not that I don't want to be one
ah,
of the best in the world and retire having been a world champion in triathlon. But it's just that success doesn't have to be a gold medal.
100%, brilliant answer. Last question: what does it mean to you to be from the Isle of Man and represent the Manx people?
Yeah, I think it means everything really. It's interesting because again, like you just even from a young age, you think that everywhere does it, and you think that everywhere's like that, but they're not. And you'll always see Manx athletes talk about like how proud they are and things like that. And you don't hear it from as many places. And the reason people are proud is because they're supported with things like sports aid, things like the community.
Mm,
The grassroots level of sport. There's so much of it that people want to see you succeed, and it's easy to get hung up on like. There's always going to be people in life that try and they don't not want to see you succeed, but maybe they got their own stuff going on, and it maybe
mm.
feels that way sometimes. But I think like being Manx is just like one of the things my partner said, because she's not from the Isle of Man, she's from Leicester, is
Oof.
is that everyone when she comes to the Isle of Man, everyone says, "What do you think of the Isle of Man? Are you enjoying it?" And like, have you been here? Have you been there? Do you like this? Like,
Mm.
do you like training here? Do you like the cycling sort of thing? And no one ever says that to me when I go to anywhere else, or to her when you go anywhere else, when you visit
Oh, they
anywhere.
wouldn't they wouldn't say that to you in Leicester, mate. They
No, well,
they
we're
but
just
but but
we're about
but
half an hour outside.
you feel that pride though, don't you? And
You know, there.
it's the intimacy of it because when you are on island and you're out and about, then you can be seen shopping in Douglas, and oh, it's Will Draper, and that's
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they
I tell you, one of the places that the academy, I don't know what age they are, like sort of teens, late teens, but I find now at 25, one of the places if I go home is the nightclub. Funnily enough, if I go out, it's very rare.
of course it's very rare, William.
It's very rare, and that's my choice. Like for a period in my life, that was through. No, I mean it's not by choice. In terms of for a period in my life, it was a conscious. I want to go out because my friends are, but I probably shouldn't. But now it doesn't appeal to me too much because just how much commitment I put into the sport. I just regret it for the week after. But I was out over Christmas, and this happens each time. And you see friends from school and stuff, and they just come up to you and they just ask you. They say, "Oh, I've seen you on Instagram. I've seen you on social media," and an older generation, they'll say, "I'll see you in the newspaper," because that's another thing that
Easy.
we have. So, yeah. So I just don't think you'd get that anywhere else. And they say, "Well done," and we're friends at school, and we haven't spoke for years, and they know what you've been up to, and they are almost proud of you again. And I think that's a Manx thing, and I think that's important to me.
Yeah.
Because that's what you got to remember. When it's tough, isn't it? You're making so much sacrifice, and you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, not just you, but your parents have clearly for you and your brother and all of that, and they do it all again. Of course they would.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to do it for my own kids if they're
Yeah, but listen, you're
play it forward.
yeah, and but you're giving back now, Will. You're doing this for the benefit of these guys in the academy and that. And I'm very grateful to you because that was just a brilliant conversation. And yeah, I'm sure people who will listen to this pod will also be very grateful for your wisdom and having the willingness to share your experience. So, Will, thanks very much, and hopefully I'll see you on Ireland because you won't see me in Leicester. I'll tell you that for free.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, if anyone's made it this far and found it this well, I don't say if anyone, for anyone who's made it this far. Obviously, like within Sport Aid now, as you mentioned, we're us being athletes, me at my level, and people around me. I know the other athletes that have been on the pod, and I'm sure they'd say the same. Is that if you want to reach out personally, then it's very easy to do so, and we'll get back to you. And we're now a part of that support network that you've got through Sport Aid.
We'll find a way to get your contacts, maybe in the notes to this pod.
Instagram. All the kids will know Instagram. My Instagram's Will_Pride, so easy to get into it. Georgia. You find on the Alaman on Facebook, you search someone's name, you have 100 mutual friends, don't you? You just add them as a friend.
Yeah. Will, thanks very much.
No, that's okay.
Cheers, man.